Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Birds of a Feather for Flock 4 with the 4 fathers. Right now you see 3, but I promise you 4 is coming. He has had to JP just had to clock out for a second to fix his internet. He'll be back in just a second. In the meantime, thank you for flocking with us. We just don't give a flock. We are absolutely 100% journeying together with Alan, the unraveler, and Dustin, the pursuer, where we pursue and unravel things. Just things as they come up. And today, one of those things is Tim, as you see him in front of us. We're so glad to have him. And JP, who is currently invisible, but he will be back momentarily. Today, the forefathers are going to be asking the question and answering, is God a good father? This should be a really fun show. But before we get into that, I just want to go around the circle here and introduce everybody and our perspectives that we are coming from as fathers. I'll start with myself. As I said, my name is Alan Bondar. You all probably know me by now if you're watching this Birds of a Feather series. And I'm coming from the perspective of stepdad. Now, I'm not officially a stepdad because I'm in a stage of my life where just marriage is not necessarily the best thing for my situation. I am not married, but I am partnered with Ray Vines, and her and I consider ourselves married for the most part. We live in every way as though we're married. Just financially, it doesn't seem to benefit us to take that leap. So we're cool with where we are. So for all intents and purposes, I function as unofficially stepdad. Officially, according to the kids, bonus dad. They got me this shirt last year. I am the man, the myth, the bad influence. Love this shirt. So I am bonus dad / stepdad, and that is the role that I am playing today as we have this conversation. Very much looking forward to it. Dustin, let's roll over to you, and you tell us a little bit about your status as a dad and anything else you want to say.
Probably everybody knows me. My name is Dustin Curley. I am also a part of Birds of a Feather with Alan. I am coming from the perspective of a father who has 2 kids at home, 2 boys, 10 and 12, and I am married with kids, and they are in my home full time all the time, and they are homeschooled, and I work from home, so I am with them day in and day out.
Just like a good father. Yay. Yeah. Well, I guess I was going to introduce Tim last, but we're going to have to go to him next because JP has still not found us again. So hopefully he'll return soon. But Tim, go ahead and tell us your perspective as a father and where you are right now in your stage of life.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. For anyone that doesn't know me, I didn't put my full extra handle up on the name tag there, but it's I
didn't do mine yet either. I forgot. I better do that here.
I'm a YouTuber for the YouTube channel HarmonicAtheist, and I've got 4 small kids, age 10 and under. They're awesome, amazing, and I love every minute with them. They are not homeschooled. They go to an elementary school now, but they're growing like weeds and having fun. Their world is all about Minecraft and things like that. They're with me a lot, of course, this summer, and they live with me full time. And looking forward to giving them hopefully the best of everything. But I would say that my big challenge right now is just protecting them. They've been through a lot in life, and I want to make sure that they have a good path for hopefully a very beautiful childhood.
Awesome, Tim. Now, Tim, you are in a unique situation right now, going through a divorce. For all intents and purposes, divorced. You just have to go through the official procedures with court. But more importantly, you're in a custody battle. I will personally speak for you and vouch for you here, knowing your story, also going through a custody battle on our end with Ray. So I know firsthand what it is to have to deal with lawyers and fees and time-consuming court cases and discussions. It's never ending. But the financial part is a killer in this situation. Ray and I are fortunate that we're having a dual income right now because her and I both work. You don't have that fortunate luxury. You have to cover this all on your own. Hey, JP, welcome back, man. So you're having to deal with that, and unfortunately, it's starting to drown you a little bit, isn't it? So I want to give you a chance just before we go into this episode because it's just so important to me to people to hear your story. Tell us a little bit about your life with your kids anything you feel comfortable sharing publicly about the dangers they might be facing if they ended up with the mother, however, whatever you feel like covering. And then we're going to link in this episode and more information at the bottom where they can donate to help you out, because I know you're in a dire situation right now, and I want to make sure that people have a chance to hear it. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I won't dominate the conversation too much here, but I'll give a quick overview of what I'm going through. And yeah, there's a lot of psychological as well as severe physical abuse that has happened, and my goal is to just protect them as much as I can from it. And yes, it is crazy to think about the bills that pile up. Every little thing that you do through a lawyer is a lot. And I've been doing some things pro se, but it's not going to be enough. And so I'm trying my best. So at this point, I would say that the biggest plug I would make is simply, there's a lot of things in this world right now that are asking for our money, everything from political organizations to charities and so forth. And so I get it that, times are tough, but if anyone does feel like they've got some bandwidth in their budget to help, the links, like Alan said, will be there. I really appreciate it. It would mean the world to me and my 4 kids. Again, I'm never going to stop. Like, failure is not an option. To you don't, when you're talking about something as dire as my kids need to be physically and psychologically safe, there's no end to that battle. Whatever you have to do, you'll keep doing it. I will win one way or the other. We will keep these kids safe. But in the meantime, I do have a big uphill battle, and so I appreciate anyone that's willing to partner with me. And if anybody also, if I can make one extra quick plug, while I've got this chance, if anybody does have a deconversion story where they were a very solid Christian and they would like to share their story about how they escaped, I'd love to hear it from you as well, and consider doing an interview with you.
Awesome. And we'll make sure that we put the link to your Harmonic Atheist channel as well, so that people can contact you and also watch the videos, because I think they're awesome. And I think that's one of the great things that you're doing, and appreciate that. All right, JP. So we've all had a chance to introduce ourselves and where we're coming from as fathers in this stage of life. So why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about where you are, your story with your kids, your spouse, whatever you want to share, so that we can kind of get your perspective you're bringing to this conversation. Or not. JP, you there? Do you have your audio on?
We cannot hear you.
I mean, this is fun, but not really. Can't.
He could mime his story.
Dude,
yeah, or sign language.
Is breaking up.
Oh,
you got it
now we got you, but can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Did you hear me?
I can.
Oh boy.
For you.
Yeah, dude, your internet connection is just awful.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I wonder if his TV
up,
is streaming
all the time. Like,
all right, dude. This is. I'm gonna have to kick you off.
When they come back.
You got to figure out what you're going on with your internet, bro. Unfortunately, we're gonna.
If your TV is streaming behind you, JP, cut that off too.
I can hear you. Streaming. Yeah, I heard the whole story.
Cut your TV off too, man. I might be killing it.
You were talking about the.
All right, I'm just gonna remove him. Unfortunately.
Yeah, let's just get going, and then if he can come back in.
Yeah, I'm gonna kick him out. Hopefully, he'll come back in. Anyway,
we can rename this the Trinity of Fatherhood.
Yeah.
Maybe he just wasn't elect by God to be in this meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on one second. Try to eliminate anything. I'm texting real quick. Anything that's causing interference.
So his TV's on behind him. If that's streaming, then that's pulling bandwidth.
Yep. Like your TV, and jump back in. Okay. All right. Well, jump back in. All right. So anyway, everybody, viewers, we apologize for that. You know the way it is, man. It's technology. Sometimes we have these issues, but anyway, so let's start out this episode with a verse from James chapter 1, 16 and 17. Don't be deceived, my brothers and sisters. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. So the first thing I just want to, like, I read that, and the first thought that I have is, if he doesn't change, then why does he shift so much from how he handles things under the old covenant to how he handles things under the new covenant, or supposedly handles things, you know, it's very abundantly clear. We'll just stick to one of the most clear ones, that he gives instructions and endorses slavery in the old covenant. We know this. And I don't care if it's indentured servitude or chattel slavery. Any form of slavery is not good. That's not something we should be praising. But I think as a Christian, you're just so into the mindset that you have to defend God at all costs. And so you find yourself as a Christian doing leapfrog, trying to find ways to excuse God for anything you think is wrong, just because he can't possibly be wrong. Because I mean, the verse right here says, "Not God, everything he does is wonderful," and yet he shifts. Somehow you get into the new covenant, or even not the new covenant, like just even 2025, and as Christians, you're like, "Well, yeah, I mean, slavery, obviously that's wrong." Based on what? Not your father, not God. Where did that come from? You know, so even as a stepdad, I would just be like horrified telling my children that it's okay to own slaves and beat them as long as they don't die after 3 days. Like, I could never, ever in my life teach my stepkids that. And so I want to get perspectives from all of you, but hopefully, JP, so we're going to pause on that. Don't lose focus. You're back now. So let's get your perspective then, and then we'll jump right back into the verse we're talking about. So JP, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about your perspective, where you're coming from.
So I'm coming from, I was born Catholic, as you know, and then I became a born-again Christian at about 24 years old, and got married right away with my wife, Celine, and we have 3 beautiful kids. My boy is nearly 40 years old. My daughter is 37, 38, and I have one adopted girl, Mila Jad, that you have met.
Yep. I've met all your kids, actually.
Yes, that's it.
Yep.
And we took her as a foster family, and after a while, we adopted her. And she has all kinds of mental issues, and it's very complicated, but it's put some strain on the whole family. And that's about the background of it. Which other issue did you want to hear about?
Well, just the fact that you are married and your kids are out of the home now. They're grown.
Yes, they are out of the home, and we bought a small condo just to make sure they never come back.
Nice.
You have to reshuffle the whole routines. It gets pretty complicated. And the last time I did that, my dear son installed them for a good while in the house, and we were very happy when he finally did move out, you know. But he had to move out because we bought a condo. So bye-bye, you know. Because it's very delicate, because you have to push them off the nest once in a while. You know, they kind of cling. I mean, if you are fathers somehow, some way, you know that you always do. You know, you're still gonna take care of them till they die. You know, but you have to have some rules. You know, otherwise they drain you, they kill you within a few days, a few years. They can suck you dry, you know. I mean, right. You have to keep everything in perspective. It's quite a challenge. It's quite a challenge for me, anyways. It's this. Well, I love them. There's no cute discourse around there. It's absolute love for them, but there's some rules, you know. Enough is enough.
Right.
That's about how I go about.
Perfect. All right. So
it's a little rough.
So JP, so we're on James chapter 1, verse 17. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. And we were just talking about how he changes even from the covenants and how he does things. And I made my comments, so we're going to give everybody a chance to comment. Yeah. So one thing that makes you unique from all of us as a father is, number one, you're a French Canadian, which you're going to bring that perspective that none of us have. How does a French Canadian dad handle things? So that's even a more unique situation. That's cool. Also, you have terrible internet, so that's also going to make you unique.
But now we're okay. I think we're okay now. I
we're
think
still pretty bad, but it's
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry.
You're here, so I don't know that we're going to get much better. So we're just going to have to put up with it and just figure it out. But my recommendation is figure that out for the future because it's pretty bad. But anyway, we'll roll with it, man. Just stick around. Don't go anywhere now unless you completely freeze, and I'll kick you out again. But otherwise, all right. So I'm going to shift over to Dustin. Shifting Shadows. What are your thoughts, man?
Man, I struggled with this. To be honest with you, I really did. I've been thinking about this for the last 4 or 5 days since I knew this flock was coming up. The whole idea of God as a father, and I will tell you that for me, having Jameson 12 years ago, well, almost 13 years ago, and I was already a full preterist at that time, but having Jameson for me was one of the most pivotal moments in my life as a Christian, because I held him in my arms and all of my doctrine at that point became very muddy. I was Reformed at that time. I was a determinist, Calvinist at that point. But I don't think that would have mattered. The idea that is presented in the Bible of God as a father did not mesh with anything going on inside of me when I held my son. And I really, really began to struggle with that because, and I started asking some hard questions of some people that I really admired. Dawn, you were one of them, Alan, back then. And Sam, I started asking some hard questions of some guys, and I didn't ever really get any good answers that seemed humane. What I began to realize was there is a not so subtle sociopathy within Christianity that detaches people from humanness. And I could not do that when I held my boy. I just couldn't do it. And that was when he was first born. My love for him grew, and it only has continued to grow over the years. So the depiction of God as a father in the Bible to me is not only cultish, but it's sick. It is a very, very, very sick image of what a father is. And I think that it somehow inherently begins to warp people's thinking. And I think it's one of the causes of dysfunction in our culture. I really do. I think the whole picture of God is just a dysfunctional, sick, pernicious, cultish mess. So there's my answer, man.
No, and
amen.
Yeah, no, and it's fascinating to hear you say that, because I don't imagine there are many, if any, fathers that would actually act on some of the commands God actually gave in the Bible. Like one of the questions that now I'm currently asking Christians when I encounter them is, okay, you believe God is your objective standard, right? And so morally speaking, you are obligated to obey this God no matter what he says. So if God comes to you and he says, I want you to do such and such, would you just do it because that's what God said? And typically the answer is, well, yeah, because it's God said it. But then you say, okay, so what if God came to you and said, for the rest of your life, I want you to kill babies. Every baby you see, I just want you to slaughter it. And not just do that, but I want you to smash its head against a rock, just like he commanded in the old covenant to dash the babies against the rock. If God commanded you to do that, would you do it? I'm going to tell you, man, there's a problem with either answer. If you're going to say, oh, yeah, I do it, you belong in an insane asylum or in jail before anything even happens, because there's something sick with you if you're willing to do that. And if you say no, then how can you claim that you trust God and that he's a good God and that he's an objective standard? Because now you've just changed your mind about that. So no matter which way you go with that answer, there is something wrong with your system.
Yeah. So let me ask each of you guys this question, and I don't think it'll take long to answer this, but one of the immediate stories, and I'm sure you can all guess, was Abraham and Isaac. It was one of the very first things I began to think about because, man, I don't know how many times before I had kids, I would say, well, of course, it was a test for Abraham and there was nothing wrong with God enacting that. And it showed Abraham's faithfulness and God rewarded him. And it was all doctrine. It was just doctrine. Okay, well, now Jameson comes along and I hold this little baby and all of a sudden there is this unexplainable, magnificently powerful connection between my son and I. And I started to think, if God came to me, and I mean, Alan, you knew me. I mean, I was a hardcore Christian. I mean, I pastored and I mean, all the stuff. If God came to me and said, Dustin, I need you to take Jameson and put him up on that rock, and you're going to kill him and offer him up as a burnt offering. Go do that. You can take that order and shove it right up where, I mean, there's no way. I would have said, kill me. You can do whatever you want, but there's no way that's going to happen. That is just not going to happen. There's absolutely no part of me, even if I were to somehow see down the road and go, oh, it's a test. That's a sick way for a father to get his son to prove his faithfulness to the father.
Dude, you're literally incapable of doing it. You just can't.
There's no way.
I couldn't even pick up the knife. There's no way. All right, but Dustin, that's only because you've never gone through a situation where your kids are out of the home, so you can't understand it. So, JP, Dustin doesn't get it. I don't get it. Maybe you get it. Come on, tell us what your thoughts on this is. As a father whose kids have left the home, surely you would kill your son, right?
I sure hope my connection is cracking up. But I heard everything. You still there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Everybody
yeah. What's
there?
your answer?
Yes. Okay. Good. But my answer is just about the same thing. I mean, when I almost swallowed my boy when I had him. It's a little thing there. It's nice and hot and wet. It just came out, and I was almost kissing him, like I want to eat him like a jujube. Undescribable. It's your baby. It's fantastic. But I think this Bible is structured to make sure that you feel somehow guilty, of not being ready to do such a big thing that he asks you, that special test. And but I never felt guilty about that. But it's like a little piece of rock in the building that it make you more guilty. You have a more, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you're not, you still got, you need this, and you're like running after the carrot, nonstop, and there's a big stick. If ever you blow the whole thing, we're all going to hell anyway, 4 of us. But it's a stupid story. I mean, when you think about it, it's a real stupid story. I mean, think about that. You're gonna bring your boy to set. I mean, I'm speechless before that, because I was thinking about it since Alan asked me like 2-3 weeks ago, we at least, and I couldn't find the angle. What's up with this thing? It's. And when you see also, it ramifies in all kind of different things. Like you were asking me about being French Canadian, how I do it here. Here, it's very historically the wife that runs the show.
Oh, that's every home, bro. Yes.
but in the States they don't say it. They don't claim it out loud. Here, it's okay. The guy brings his paycheck to the wife, and the wife, she runs the show, and the guy, he just follows in the back, and that's the traditional. model here. It made matriarchal, it's matriarchal. And the patriarchy, when you see the Ephesians 5 structure there, God, Christ, the man, the lady, the dog, the cat, whoop, they have the kids there. And yeah, and yeah, all the way down to the mouse. This is just a chain of command, like a military thing. It's got nothing to do with. I mean, for me, it always it's like having a heartburn. When I see that, it's like my skin crawls. I mean, the whole the big guy with a big dick. He runs the show. So for me, I don't go for that. Very, very egalitarian. We're a team. We work together. She's good for this. I'm good for that. We do our best to reach the top together. It's a respecting, not a hierarchical thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Same
it
thing
goes
with
to
the
show
kids.
whoever wrote these texts were clearly living in a patriarchal type of society where they had to show their big dick and make sure that they were in charge of everything, and made women to be nothing but property just so they could do whatever they want with it. Like, it's a sick story. The whole thing is sick from beginning to end.
Yep.
You only see that when you get out of the system, because as long as you're in it, just protect God at all costs, because God's good all the time. God's good.
All different religions. If you look at Muslims, the Islam, I mean, the structure of is like that. In India, it's very, very hard. The guy, he's like half god, and the girl, she's like a quarter of a penny. She's nothing, and it's a whole shamble. It's something very difficult. The power struggle between sexes. And then how are you going to show that to your kids? What are you going to be as a model to your kids? Is very important, because they're going to have a partner one day, and they're going to be having a relationship. And if they try to copy that kind of garbage of sacrificing kids on the rock, that's nonsense.
Well,
JP,
the problem is you haven't gone through a divorce and had to deal with kids at home. That's the problem. Tim, obviously, I'm pretty sure Tim will have a much different perspective than the three of us, because he's going through something entirely different. And until you go through that, you really can't understand how good God is. So, Tim,
I agree.
Tell us your perspective on this.
There's so many ways to go with this. I'm not even sure where to start. I would just say, I was thinking, just for sort of the background of that story of Abraham and Isaac that Dustin brought up, I think it's interesting that a lot of scholarship does think that the original story did include him sacrificing Isaac. Like if you've read Richard Friedman's book, Who Wrote the Bible, he makes a case, and others, looking at the Jewish Midrash books, they say that he originally did kill Isaac and that it was changed. But then when you just broaden yourself out to ancient Egypt, ancient Mesopotamia, and even, South America, Mesoamerica, you look at that, and, child sacrifice was very, very common back then. So to me, it kind of says a couple things. Number one, mythology is, it's just a monster. Like, you got to kill mythology. Mythology is literally making us the worst possible humans we could ever be. I think it's normal to say there's something violent in our nature because we come from animals, but it's also, I think, a truism that animals tend to love their offspring, at least most of them. And, we've inherited a beautiful nature of loving our offspring. And it really takes something pretty sick and sadistic to switch from that, how we've evolved, to loving. I mean, I love looking at, nature videos when I've got time, and just looking at like a tigress, taking care of little baby tigers. It's just normal for animals to take care of their babies. And for us to be willing to say, that we would ever hurt our own children, is pretty intense. But I think when you look at this, and you really, I've said this before on my channel, and I think it's sort of related here in a little different sense, but when you think monstrous thoughts long enough, they kind of do make you into a monster. And I think that's a really good example. This is a good example where if you really believe that there's a God who would command you to do that, whether it's your own children or someone else's tribe, there's something in that just says, wow, like this truly, the belief that we need to sacrifice people either to help God run the cosmos or to appease for our sins, atone for our sins in some way, whatever it is, or just to make God happy because he likes the smell of burnt meat and likes the sacrifice to come up into his nostrils. Whatever it is, like we're good, obviously, at making up mythology. We're good at anthropomorphizing this character that we've come up with in our heads and in our books. But there's something in us that has to rise above it and say, this whole concept is horrible, where we have truly been willing to sacrifice our own progeny. I do think that there's something too that happens when you deconvert, where you really go through a process where you step back and you think, what the hell have I done to myself, to my life, knowing it's, a third or half over probably. What have I done to my own life by believing in this mythology? But then what is it really something I'm willing to pass on to my kids, both in the sense of the atrocities that we're touching on here, but just the general concepts. I mean, even if you were to say, well, ignore that for just the sake of it for a minute. What about God in general? Because he's usually not saying that stuff. He's generally saying other stuff. You get the strong picture that this is a God who, number one, isn't really present. He's kind of an absentee father. He never shows up when you need him the most. You're kind of guessing, is he really there? Is he listening to me? Is he not? And he's very, very flim flam. Like he's like, I love you so much and I'll be your God forever. But if you cross me, I'm going to sell you to your enemies and not talk to you for 300 years. It's like, well, which one is it? Is your love conditional or unconditional? And it's pretty, I think it's pretty clear to me that they didn't have the words for it probably back then, but the Yahweh character was he's just pure psychopath. He's pure psychopath. You're nothing without me. And I love you, but I will beat the shit out of you if you disobey me. And I will even destroy you and your children. The way that we somehow suckered ourselves into thinking that's a good message for ourselves and for our families is truly, it's just astounding. You step back and you think, what the hell was I thinking? Even something simpler like a God who likes to cut off the end of little boys' penises, like that should have been enough to say, no way, this is bizarre. But all the atrocities are enough. Yeah, when you look at your kids, if they don't give you enough impetus to reject Yahweh, I don't know what would. I mean, what else do you need besides the beauty of your own children? I got to catch my own children as they were born, 4 kids, 3 of them born at home. Just when you see the miracle of childbirth and you get to raise them and see their beautiful minds, their beautiful lives, like what could possibly drive you to think teaching them a psychopathic hero demigod is the best person to worship and emulate and strive to eventually get to live eternity with? It's crazy. And he's definitely not a father that I would want in any way my kids to look up to.
I think that stems from the desire to do the best thing for our kids, that we go,
Yeah.
I mean, and then we look back and we say, what was I hypnotized? What happened to me? I mean, you have shame for the rest of your life, feeling guilty of having been I've been trapped in that thing for 35 years. You feel like, where was I? I mean, I have the same brain today, but I mean, what happened to me there? I mean, it's amazing. It's very powerful.
Yeah. So Tim, you hit on something, man, that this was the second part of what I thought about. Because, man, I thought about 1,000 different verses about all the way from Genesis through to Revelation. I was thinking about just even the motif of fatherhood, but the two that hit me the most was Abraham and Isaac, which is, I love what JP said. It's just a stupid story. It's just perfect. It is. It's just a stupid story. But the other one that kept coming to mind was Adam. So God created Adam. I created my son. Okay. I mean, with the help of my wife, but let's just take the analogy for what it's worth. So I created Adam and I give him everything because that's how much I love him. I love my son. I give him everything, but I just tell him, don't do that one thing. Okay. You have everything you want. Just don't do that one thing. Well, he does that one thing. He was deceived, but he still did the one thing. So I'm not going to teach him a lesson from that. I'm not going to carefully guide him and mold his thinking, his critical thinking skills to see the dangers in that. No, I'm going to curse that child for the rest of his life. And not only am I going to curse him, but I'm going to curse all of humanity through him for that one mistake, whatever that one mistake was. There's all sorts of theories, and we all know that. But for that one mistake, I am going to curse my son for the rest of his life and make his life miserable. he will remember that mistake for the rest of his freaking life, and all of his progeny after him, the whole entire human race is all going to feel the sting of that death that he created. Okay. That's psychopathic to me. That's a psychopathic kind of thinking. And so then you take it back and you say, well, but you have to give your son free will. I understand that. I could go with either model, the free will model or the deterministic model, and both of them are sick. Both of them are sick no matter which way you think about them, because I look at my son and I think, I watch my son sometimes. I watch him walking towards something that I know is going to be a hard lesson for him to learn. Sometimes I will stop that. I'm not going to let him walk out in the middle of the street if there's a car coming. But sometimes I will let him walk into things for the greater good. He'll learn that lesson from that. But then I hold him and I explain to him and I sharpen his critical thinking skills. There is a very tender, loving, gentle purpose behind that discipline. It's nurturing. It is not punitive. It is not judgment. It is not condemnation. It is none of those things. And the very first act we see Yahweh doing in the Bible against his son is punitive judgment and condemning. It's horrific. And not only him, but the rest of his progeny after him for as long as time goes until, Jesus returns and waxes the heavens and all that stupid crap. I can't fathom that. I cannot fathom either of my boys telling them, oh man, I told you to get up at 9:00 and do your chores, and you knew that Bianca was coming over at 11 to start your school. You knew and you didn't do it. You didn't get up when I told you to. Get the hell out of the house. You're cut off. You'll never have money for me. In fact, give me your clothes. I'm going to send you out naked. I don't care that it's snowing right now. Get out of my house forever. You will never come back here again because you didn't do what I said.
Bro, and look, it gets even worse. So check it. So God, gives this command that, you're not to eat of this fruit, because if you do, then you'll have the knowledge of good and evil. If you don't have the knowledge of good and evil, then how do you even know that what he's commanding you to do is right or wrong, because you don't have the knowledge of good and evil? So that's an absolutely ridiculous thing. It would be equivalent to you having Jameson, or any of you guys having your kid, your first kid, and when that kid's born, as a baby, you tell that kid, if you cry, I will punish you for the rest of your life and kick you out. That kid doesn't fucking know that crying is wrong. He's not even cognizant of it because he's not aware of what's right or wrong yet. And he cries. And so, oh my God, you cried. You're out. You and all of your posterity for the rest of eternity. What? That's the equivalent. Like, that's how ridiculous this story is.
Yes.
I think one of the things that I think helps me too is when you step back from all the individual stories and you just kind of think through or sort of brainstorm, like what would a good God look like, or not a good God, a good father, just in general, not whether divine or not, just what would a good father look like?
Yeah.
And you just have this little list in your head. I mean, we could all come up with them, but you're emotionally available, you're supportive on a consistent basis, you're going to be, you're going to discipline them appropriately, but you're not going to be judgmental. You're going to encourage them. You're going to be safe for them. You're going to be accountable for your actions too. You're going to communicate respectfully. You're going to advocate for them. You're going to have all these things that you think that you're going to send this message, like, I am here for you. I'm a safe place. You can always come to me. I'll always have your back. Like, this is the relationship that will push you into a healthy adulthood for yourself, for the child. And you just think, when you really look at God's character, it's nothing like that. He's impetulant, and he's just, honestly, he's not just psychopathic. He's really like a baby. I mean, they really pick like a babyish perspective for him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it was, if I can say, it was kind of this stuff, and it was sort of the flip side of it. But this is exactly what got me out of Christianity, because I wasn't seriously investigating any of it, and none of these topics that you'd say, well, these should have gotten you out. They didn't, because my Calvinism was at an extreme level that all this was excusable. In fact, I was at a church like a year or two before my deconversion, and I remember this story where this pastor told this illustration where he said, he was talking about the whole congregation. He said, I want to tell you, I've got permission from this lady that I counseled to tell you her story. She gave me permission to say this. She had a baby and the baby died, a year after it was born or something. And she was beyond grief. She couldn't bear the grief anymore. And he's told her, ma'am, you're not going to grieve properly until you get your theology right. And he said to her, and apparently into the whole congregation, ma'am, you're not going to heal till you remember your baby deserved to die. And as a Calvinist church, and as a Calvinist, I remember thinking, I'm cringing, thinking, I can't believe you said that to a grieving woman. But also theologically, that's technically correct. We all do, the fact that we're breathing for one more second is a grace of God. But that's how twisted this stuff gets. But when we're just in that context for decades of that kind of theology, we're just sitting around here at home singing Joshua Fought the Battle of Jericho, which is a fun little kid song. And I'm thinking, I know what happens next in that story. After Jericho, they're slaughtering, they're taking child brides or slaves, genocide, land theft.
Yes.
That's what saved me, not Jesus, but my kids. They saved me because I thought I can't pass this garbage on. There's no such thing as a generational curse, but if I can borrow that phraseology, the generational curse is Christianity, and it has to end with me. Yeah, and that's what got me out.
Wow.
Well, praise the devil.
Oh
Absolutely.
man, JP's got the one-liners of this show. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's the Arnold Schwarzenegger of.
It's fantastic that you got out of there, eh? Instead of saying amen, praise the devil.
Yeah, but think about that for a minute, though, Tim. Alan and I have talked about this on the show before, because you bring up a very fascinating and relevant point, because we can talk about the idea of fatherhood, right? Just the idea of fatherhood with children. Okay, but now let's talk about nurturing and teaching them, because you brought that up, and Alan and I have talked about this. So what is the better model? If you were to ask any rational, sanely thinking person, what is the better model? To tell a kid that they are dirty, incapable, worthless, and vile, okay, now go do some good. Or you tell them you are magnificently capable, you are powerful, you have an incredible brain, there is unlimited opportunities for you. Which of those kids is going to go off and do the better thing? And I think to myself, we stick kids in Sunday school classes from a very early age. And, no, God told Noah to build him an arky, and we teach them those stories, but it's just like you said, wait a minute, I know what really happens in that story. It's not all pretty rainbows. It's a disgusting story. It's absolutely disgusting. And so you stick this little child with this just sponge of a brain in this class with someone else teaching them, mind you, not me. It's not me doing it. I'm off somewhere else checking off the box. But you have someone else telling this child, did you know that you're a vile sinner separated from God at birth, and you're incapable of anything, and your most incredible deeds are like filthy rags before God. All you need to do is take a bath in Jesus's blood and you can be okay. What in the actual I mean, and that's what Christians are doing with their children every single week, sticking them in that kind of stuff. And then they wonder when they go off to college why they leave the faith. I would too. I mean, no wonder they leave that faith. But was it ever? I mean, I'll just stop there. What are y'all's thoughts on that? I mean, nurturing and cultivating.
Well, about that sin thing, if I may. We subtly tell them, everybody's a sinner. I'm a sinner, and you're a sinner. Everybody's a sinner, and we all deserve this and that. And we sell that same way you just caricatured it a little bit there. We sell it very subtly, We just repeat it and repeat it. Here, peace has come. If you breathe once, it's once too much. You deserve a kick in the ass and the hell for eternity. What kind of self-image, self-esteem? Me, I'm always working on correct esteem of myself or correct esteem of my kids, to make sure that, they don't go like they think they can fly. You just drop off the thing. You have to be realist. At the same time, always build them up, build them up, build them up. Not just say, you're just a dirty, incapable sinner. It's and that's why the society is so, and it reflects on our politics also. You see how people will just, it's the same as your religion. They swallow it, they go with it.
What you were just describing, I don't know if you guys ever saw the show This Is Us.
Oh yeah,
such a powerful show. Just
man, I bawled like a baby nearly every episode.
Dude, don't admit that. I have to admit that too then. Yes, I cried every freaking episode. It was so powerful. But what JP was describing, everything we're talking about here, it reminds me of Jack's father. Do you remember the asshole that he was?
Yep.
Just continuously putting his thumb down on his two boys and making them feel like shit every step of the way, where they could never, ever break out and be their own man. And you come home from work and your whole job is to be subservient to your dad and give him his beer so that he can get drunk and beat the shit out of you at night. Like, when I think of the father described in the Bible, like, that's what it's like. It's like this abusive dad that just puts his thumb down on you to make you to make sure you have you're nothing without him. Nothing. You need him every step of the way. Now bring me my fucking beer so that I can go and cherish myself and drink myself away and then tell you how shitty you are. That's what it sounds like. That's what the whole Bible is. That's what it sounds like. It's absolutely insane. Yep. It's literally a drunk, abusive father. Like, that's the picture. It's mind-blowing. And yet all four of us bought this as Christians. I want to talk about that for a second because I know 100% that there are going to be Christians that are going to watch this and they're going to be like, oh, that's because you guys are just atheists. You don't know God at all. You never knew God, blah, blah, blah. And I get so frustrated with that. Investing 40 years, it's like they don't get it. It's like, I invested 40 years of my life into this shit. JP said 38. Tim, how many was it for you?
I was 43 when I left. So if I got saved around 5, maybe 38 years or so.
38 years, Dustin?
30.
All right. So no less than 30 years that all of us invested into this thing, all because our whole ploy was to trick everybody after 30 years of wasting that much time living as holy as we could instead of living it up in the world. In our best years, mind you, we sacrificed so much, and here we are now all of a sudden coming out and be like, ha, we didn't really believe in God ever. That's so stupid. It's ridiculous that people accuse us of that. Like, who does that? That is the stupidest plan on the planet. Like, even terrorists don't take this long to execute a plan. Like, good grief. So, what's that?
Cognitive dissonance,
totally. Like, it's just absolutely absurd.
We have to find a way to explain it. So that's why we say, well, you must not have been a real one.
Right. You must not.
You're not the real person.
It's bullshit. All four of us, no less than 30 years, invested our lives into this thing, and not just a little bit. Not just a little bit, like
full time.
We poured our lives into it as though it was like the air we breathed. I can tell you that. Like, it was just like I would have suffocated without God prior to becoming an atheist. Like, that's how much I was passionate about it. And yet, all four of us would have bought into this Yahweh, this Father, hook, line, and sinker. Let's talk about that for a second, because I know there's Christians watching and they want to know, why as a Christian did you buy it and not now? Like, I don't even know the answer to this, but I'm just going to throw it at you guys. I want to hear your thoughts.
I think JP hit the nail on the head. And you and I have talked about this, Alan. I think it starts with the proposition of sin. As soon as you buy into the proposition of sin, then you need a savior. And the only organization that has that savior is the church. And so they convince you of the dilemma, and then they're the only ones who can peddle the solution to the dilemma. And, for me personally, I was broken when I came into Christianity. I was just a mess, and I needed something. Really what I needed was just love and community. And so I accepted the sin I did to get that love and that community.
Yes.
But as soon as I accepted the sin proposition and the grace of God was free gift, then they pulled the rug out from under me, and I realized it wasn't so free afterwards. Because once you accepted it, there's a whole bunch of hoops you've got to jump through to remain in it, and stay in their good graces so that you don't, fall out of or get excommunicated or chastised for sin in your life and things like that. But I mean, once you buy into the sin proposition and the repercussion of that, which is hell, you have to have the remedy for that. You have to. So I think it begins with that notion, and then everything else dominoes after that.
So I mean, I appreciate that, and I think you're absolutely 100% right. So, Tim, I'll ask you this. I'm sure Dustin, I'm sure all of you can answer, but I'm just going to throw it to Tim, and then you guys can answer after. Why is it though that even if everything Dustin just said is accurate, which it is, it's 100% accurate, how is it that even as fathers, you guys still bow down to this masochistic, evil, deterministic, vile, slavery-driven, bloodshed-driven God? Like, how did we not, and I can't say for me because I never had my own kids, but I can only speak for you guys, when you actually had your own kids at that very moment, how did you not see it? Like, and that's what I'm curious about, because if I'm a Christian, I'm saying, well, see, you guys just whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is all three of you were still stuck in it for many years, even after you had kids. How did you still think this God was so wonderful? How?
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Tim.
Oh, please, you first.
I'll
wait.
I got into Christianity at the same time my wife became pregnant, and then we got married. She was pregnant, and it was kind of the classical around 20-year-old, very vulnerable young man at a turning point in this, in his life, and you get a kid, and you want to do it right. And I was telling my wife something like, one kid, you stay home for 40 years. 2 kids, you stay home for 80 years. That was I found that they have a model there. That's how it works. I wanted stability, and I said, there you go. You got stability in there. So I jumped on that thing. But it was like hyper, wasn't 40. My wife just finished her 40-year 40-year career of teaching and all that, and she just finished now. She worked all her life. But it's just to show what kind of how they kind of fill some perceived needs that you have. And you're very vulnerable. You want to do right. It's time to make things straight. You want to be right with God. You believe there's a God. You don't know him too much. And you get sucked in like a vacuum cleaner. Once you just got in the machine, and I became a Jesus freak.
That makes sense. So it sounds like what you're saying is the reason is because it wasn't so much about your kids at that point. It was still about you feeling insignificant as an individual, because the sin problem made you have such a void that you needed this God to solve your problem. It doesn't matter what kind of an asshole he was. You just couldn't see that because you just had your own issues.
Oh, no. God, you can't be an asshole.
That tracks. That makes sense. I'm starting to see how we all got sucked into it. That makes sense. Tim, do you want to comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think my 2 cents on it is that for a lot of this stuff, like I actively spend, I think, a lot of my time sort of consciously and unconsciously thinking about the psychology of what it took for us to get to where we were, not as parents or starting a family, but as young children. Because a lot of this stuff, by the time you're an adult, you're not thinking, do I want to pass this on? Is this God good? By that point, by the time of adulthood, you're already sure that you're sure that you're sure. So it's not like it's even a thing where you have to kind of rethink it and say, well, am I sure that God is good? It's been long settled. The issue, I think, to me is that it's the conditioning, it's the brainwashing. When you think about how when you're a kid, you're in that pre-rational acceptance phase where everything's magical thinking, and your brain is not able to process with the critical filters that you're going to get later on. And then when you add in things like a spiritualized conscience and the idea of God's surveilling you, and the idea of this manipulation that's happening where he's like the God character, but really your parents are also your God character in your home. And so you're kind of like your parents have kind of trained you to see themselves as like the go-between between you and God, because they're passing it on. And but at the same time, it's weird, like you'd hear these messages like God loves you even more than mommy and daddy do. So you're kind of reframing God as like your supreme attachment figure. And so by the time you get to be an adult and you've gone through like this fear-based stuff, the conditioning, and your identity is just enmeshed in this God, you're a Christian, I'm a CHRISTIN, you're so stuck in it, and your black and white thinking has become so cemented, and your all the doctrines are lining up, everything from the original sin stuff, you're a child of Adam and Eve, your shame, the beauty of the gospel is considered beautiful. God is not just the bad father to Adam or the bad teacher to Abraham about how he should parent Isaac. He's the bad father to his own son, Jesus Christ. And so you weave in all these dynamics of rewards and punishment with heaven and hell, and you've trained yourself to avoid the cognitive dissonance that one of y'all mentioned earlier. And at that point, by the time you're an adult, you've got this in group of the church. You're isolated. You're shut off from other people, and you've been emotionally, psychologically groomed for 30 years. And so by the time you're an adult, there's no real choice. And I was thinking about how this basically gets you to a point where you in your arrogance can't see that the world is actually many steps ahead of us. Like I remember growing up under Jim Dobson, and it was all tough love and punishment and so forth. But at the same time that he was preaching his garbage, there were psychiatrists in the world, and probably a long time before that, but just for sure they were coming, I think, in a broader sense that our culture was listening more, that there were more and more psychiatrists talking about the fact that you need to think about how you're raising your children, and that the wounds of childhood will stay with them for the rest of their lives. They were decades ahead of Christians, and it was just like a few Christians kind of got their conscience pricked. They wanted to stay Christians, but they started listening to these worldly psychiatrists. They started changing their tune to say, oh, we need to kind of make God softer and avoid the hard verses. But they were basically just taking what the world already knew, which is that your message of severe punishment to these kids is going to mess with them for life. And so we're kind of schmoozing our Christian message, but they were ahead of us. But I mean, to me, it all goes back to psychology. I didn't have to rethink my parenthood. I knew, and once you have it, like I remember John MacArthur preaching a sermon. I wasn't in his church on the radio. He was talking about how he would preach messages about homosexuality or about men, a patriarchy, men leading the church. And he would sometimes have these people from the news that would come and like be shocked that he could say these things in this modern world. And they would interview him and say, how do your people accept these messages? They're so contrary to our culture. And he said, you don't get it. You don't get it. The question is not, is patriarchy a good idea? Is homosexuality a bad idea? The question is the word of God the authority? Once you've established that, everything else ranks under it, everything. And so if he says, beat your kids because that's the way God wants you to treat your kids, to spare the rod, spoil the child, that kind of stuff. If that's what God does and he wants you to do, my question isn't how do I discipline my kids? My question isn't, do I want to be mean to them? Does it sound too mean to say you're a dirty, rotten sinner? No. Does the Bible say it? And is the Bible my authority? Once you've got that horrible worldview, it's you're handcuffed. You are stuck in mental prison. And that's why it really is a mental prison. You have to get out of it. The key's in your pocket. It's been there the whole time, but you have to find a way to get that key and get out.
Yeah, no, I mean, what you're saying is so true. In fact, it is one of the chief problems I see with the Christian argument for the morality of God or morality for humanity. It's this whole idea that God is the transcendent or objective standard, and we all just have to believe what God says because without him, we don't have any moral standard. And the reality is, everything you just said is on point. Reality is, if you don't question whatever God says, then are you really a moral agent or are you just a robot? You're just a robot. If you do question what God says, now you're a moral agent, but then you've just admitted that God is not some objective transcendent standard, but that you yourself are choosing
It's the flesh.
what parts of him you want to obey and what parts you don't. I mean, like this whole argument of God being a transcendent standard is absolutely insanely stupid. It doesn't work, and I don't understand why Christians continue to maintain that. Well, I do, I guess, because I was a Christian and I maintain that. But like you said, Tim, it's the brainwashing. It's just once you're there, and there's there's nothing that can get you out of that other than removing the brainwashing. That's it. Like until that happens, you're stuck. You're just stuck. And it's crazy how much all of us just follow the system.
So here's another one. So let's say Jameson's my great son. He's the best son. He does everything I tell him to do. He's amazing. I love him. I'm so proud of him. I have absolutely no reason to chastise him or discipline him at all. And then let's say that a neighborhood pedophile comes along and says, hey man, you know, the only reason that your kid is good like that is because you're constantly around him. I bet if you let him off on his own, don't protect him, I bet he'll do the wrong thing. And in fact, let me do some stuff to him. Will you turn him over to me for a little bit?
God, this sounds like Job, bro.
It is. let me have him for a little bit, and then let's see if he still loves you.
Oh my God, this is sick.
And I'm a dad, and I go, yeah, okay, yeah, man, let's do it. I'm gonna I won't protect Jameson. I'm just gonna let him off, and I know you're a condemned pedophile, but you go ahead, you have your way with him, and you do whatever. And he goes off and he molests Jameson, and he takes him and keeps him for a while and does all this stuff. And I go, and Jameson comes back and goes, Dad, I still love you. And I go, see, woo, yeah, I'm the winner. You're not. And he goes, well, it's because though you didn't let me hurt his friends. Let me do some stuff to the people he loves. And then I bet he'll, oh, well, okay, yeah, go ahead. And so he murders his friends and takes all the stuff from his room. And y'all know the story. I mean, please, in what world is that in any way, shape, or form a loving father to a faithful, a unequivocally vocalized faithful servant? In what way would any rational person say that is okay? Let's do that.
I was so emotionally involved with that Jesus guy. I mean, it's though he slay me, I will serve him this and that. It was you were saying the story there, and I remember in this what state of mind I would rationalize this type of text and even get off on it. I would even have some like praise God moments about it. You know, hey, yeah, devil comes but still he's, you know, God's gonna fix him up after. You know, it's okay.
No.
It's okay.
Dude, so you mentioned Jesus, right? So here's another just unbelievably important point that just needs to be drawn out, and I can't draw this out enough. Christians, please listen. You claim that Jesus is God. He is Yahweh. He is the same God as the Old Testament God. The Old Testament God endorsed rape, slavery, murder, pedophilia. He endorsed all of these things, all the stuff we're talking about, the Job story that Justin just mentioned, the Adam story that we talked about earlier. Every single story that we have talked about today that you would cringe at and just excuse the God of the Old Testament by saying, yes, but he had a plan. It was for the new covenant, and that's why he redeemed us. And it's all about like showing how the old covenant was sinful, and he just followed along with culture just to bring about the new covenant. Fine, good. He brought about the new covenant and made a change. Either way, he still endorsed it in that covenant, even if it was for some new covenant. Do you realize that none of the things he did for the people in that old covenant benefited them at all? All the Egyptian children he completely destroyed.
Murdered.
Do you think those
Murdered
children?
them.
Yeah, murdered that. You think those children or those parents even benefited from it? How? In what way was that a benefit? Because, well, I'm going to do something 6,000 years from now. How did that benefit them? The flood, destroying the whole earth and just saving 6 people, only to create incestual relationships for the rest of civilization. How and which way does that benefit anybody that was drowned, including the mothers with children, which in my mind is also an advocation from God of abortion? So all these evil acts of God that did not benefit any of these people in the Old Covenant in any way, shape, or form, just because he was going to do it for American Christians who are so fucking selfish that we think, oh, this whole story is about us. It's about God killing all these people in the Old Covenant just so we could learn what it's like to live in a spiritual realm in the New Covenant. How fucking selfish. Americans are so selfish. It's just mind-blowing that we actually think like this, that because God did all this torture for all these people in some stage, it was for us. Really? But mind you, beyond that, as I started out with this whole diatribe that I'm doing, Jesus is Yahweh. I don't care if you believe the new covenant changed and God changed his mind. He's doing things different now. Jesus, your Jesus, endorses and supports that Yahweh because he is that Yahweh. It is a sick Jesus. He is as bad as Yahweh. So you do not get to say, well, I just follow Jesus. I don't really like, because I hear this from Christians sometimes. Well, I'm the type of Christian that just follows Jesus. I like the teachings of Jesus. You don't get to say that. You do not, because Jesus is Yahweh. You don't get to get away with that. And if you do think that Jesus isn't Yahweh, then you're not a fucking Christian.
Well, can I just mention this? I'm sorry, JP. I keep cutting you off. Go ahead.
No, it's your turn. You did it first. Go ahead.
Well, something I say on my channel sometimes, and it just, I think it bears repeating. You know, when you started saying, when you were addressing Christians, or where you directly said Christians, listen to this for a second. The first thought that came to my mind when you said that, and it wasn't what the argument you were about to make, which I think is a perfectly good argument. It's a great argument, but I think part of the hardship of this kind of thing is, I bring it back to a phrase called "scope for the imagination." I grew up watching Anne of Green Gables hundreds of times, and in that, this is the most beautiful, adoptee that goes to live with Prince Edward Island with an older couple, beautiful imagination, and just sort of getting, finally safe in a safe home for the first time. But her imagination has always been there. But she's always describing the world in these beautiful ways that everyone else is real plain and simple, and she's all metaphorical. And so they'll go by a lake, and she'll say, "No, that's not the real name. That's the Lake of Shining Waters." And she keeps using the phrase "the scope for the imagination." And I think the hard part about this is that when you're in Christianity, you just don't have that. You can't. You can make a very good plea. I can make a good plea. Can you not see the psychopathic nature of Yahweh, or however we phrase it? When you're in it, you cannot see it. And it's weird, but sometimes in life, there's certain doors you have to go through that shake you up. Maybe it's literally something in your brain. Maybe it's a traumatic experience. Maybe it's you're just connecting the dots in your own brain, but something has to shift where you say, just maybe, and it's maybe at first it's just theoretical. Maybe there's a different way to see this. But when you're in it, it's one reason that on my channel, I do not really engage with Christians, because I don't think they're ready for it. It's like in Matrix. Some people are not ready to be unplugged, and I'm not going to waste my time on people that are not ready yet. There are people that are ready to be unplugged, or they're already halfway out the door. They're the people that I go after. They're the people that I want to say, I want to talk to you. And I know you're about to go through the hell on earth because your family's going to disown you. I want to be here to support you and help you. I think it's a real hardship because, when we talk about these topics, Christians simply cannot see it. And you want to beg them to see it, but they just can't. And I think one of the things that I think is my hope, and I don't know if I do this in every which way or it's really public enough, but when I was a Christian, one of the big motivations was to share the gospel without words, meaning to shine, as that song goes, shine, make them wonder what you've got, make them wish that they were not on the outside.
Newsboys!
Yeah.
And so you have to look at this and say, when you look at, for example, Christians that would beat the shit out of their kids, and you say, okay, well, you're an atheist. How do you treat your kids? Like, oh, well, I don't touch them. I don't do corporal punishment of any kind. I build them up constantly. I would never threaten them, and I would never tell them, you know, things that would undo their self-worth. I would never say you're worthless without some other God. And so I think there's a point at which you have to almost say the arguments that we make against God as a good parent matter. But in the same sense, it takes Christians saying, hey, why did you walk that little old lady across the street? You must be a Christian too, because you have so much love in your heart. You're like, no, I'm an atheist and I've got more love in my heart than you do. And my community is more gracious and forgiving, and you need to take a second look. And it's just like that little crack in the door that opens up just a little bit. You know, big doors move on very small hinges, but that little movement, and they finally get a chance to say, huh. And then maybe they ask you, maybe they don't. But if they were to give you half a chance to talk about it, you'd say, I was once like you. And then I realized I was deprived of critical information. And once I found out, and I don't mean about how to be a good daddy, I mean about the nature of the mythology in the Bible. And once you find it out and you start going through Pandora's box, it's like, oh my God, like everything that I thought was solid and sure and completely black and white, it's all up for grabs now. And I don't know what to think anymore. And all of a sudden, the scope for the imagination starts to change. And the idea of either beating the shit out of your own kids or calling Yahweh a psychopath, that all kind of lumps in this same box. Like, I have to admit, for the first time, I've been kind of saying theoretically and doctrinally, God, I'm so wrong and you're so right. I humble myself. But in a sense, in reality, I've been thinking to myself arrogantly, I'm right because I'm a Christian and you're all wrong, you worldly, secular people. And now for the first time, you have to truly get humble and say, holy shit, I'm dead wrong about almost everything in life, including parenting and God. And it shakes you up, you know, it shakes you up.
No, for sure. So, dude, I love that. Everything you just said is so wonderful. My diatribe was directed primarily at people who I know are Christians, who claim to be Christians, that already see the Old Testament God the way we're describing him here. And they just choose to say, well, but I just follow Jesus. Jesus is wonderful. And that's the problem I have. That was what I was getting at. Because, you know, even the Isaiah passage declares that Jesus is what? The everlasting Father. So he is, you know, he's the father of the new covenant Christian. Like, so he is absolutely Yahweh. So you can't just say, yeah, I see all the atrocities of the Old Testament God, but I don't see the atrocities of the New Testament God named Jesus. You should, because he is the Old Testament God.
Yeah, it seems like for progressive Christians, they need that. Whether they go any further, they can't quite go to the last line of the end of the train.
Right,
Stuff.
They can't take that last thing. So hopefully those Christians will hear what you just said and apply that, because that might take them over the edge. JP, go ahead. You've been trying to say something. Go ahead.
The way I was kind of dealing with this dissonance for the Old Testament, Yahweh, Jesus, is something called the New Testament theology. It's an approach that I think I'm frozen. Are you there?
Are, but we can hear you, so just keep talking.
Okay. And I don't know if you ever heard about the New Testament theology approach. It's just that it's a total change when you come into the New Testament, and the Old Testament only applied to the Jews. So when us as Christians, we come into it, that doesn't apply to us at all. So it's very, how can I say? It's very, it's lighter to carry the load of the guilt and all that. You know, it's a way of twisting your way around it. But the fact is, Jesus is Yahweh. Are you still there? I can't see you.
No, I know. We can't see you either. You're frozen, but we have heard everything you said. At least I have.
Good.
You guys
Good.
hear
Yeah, I can hear. Yeah.
Your audio's fine, so just keep talking. You're just
Good.
gonna be frozen physically. That's all right.
Good stuff. Okay. So that's about it. It's the only thing I had in mind when you were talking about that New Testament stuff.
It is. Could I just jump in on that real quick, JP, to say it's interesting that where we started with Alan saying the sort of like the verse in James about his, you know, there's no vacillation. It always struck me intensely, and I'm going down a slight rabbit trail here, but how you'd hear Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount and other places in the Gospels saying stuff like, you've heard it said, but I say this, and Moses taught you this, but I'm going to teach you that. And you get in the sense in the other verses in the epistles of like, the law came through Moses, but grace and truth came through Christ. And you're like, yeah, but Moses wasn't Moses. Moses was just a spokesperson for Yahweh. So it's almost like Jesus is saying, you heard me say in the Old Testament this, but now I'm changing it. I'm going to say this. And the law came through me, but now grace comes through me. It's like,
Exactly.
which one is it? It's all the same. It doesn't, and unless we misheard and were misconstrued what was originally done, and what Jesus was just, if he was real, was just a guy, a preacher, and he really wasn't the Son of God, but he was just a guy saying, Yahweh said this, but you misunderstood it. Now I want to tell you how to really interpret, which makes more sense. He was just reinterpreting, as they all did back then, reinterpret these scriptures as a preacher would, and a supposed prophet would. I'm going to tell you the right interpretation of it. In that sense, it makes more sense. But once you bring the Christian theology into it, it really gets the dissonance goes off the charts at that point.
Yes.
So interesting you say that, because it doesn't appear in the New Testament any place where it now alters God's commands of pedophilia or rape or murder or slavery. They all follow the same old covenant standards. There's no place where any New Testament writer says, I think that was some shit rules. We're just going to change things now, and we're not going to do rape anymore. Like, there's no place that actually explicitly states that. What we do as pastors is we read into it based on our current modern time lifestyle, where we know it's wrong according to our current laws. And so we read it into the New Testament and we say, oh, look, Philemon, Paul said to let him go. So obviously God was giving an example of where we shouldn't have slaves anymore. So we read that shit into it. But I mean, in reality, Paul never actually said don't have slaves. He just said don't let this guy be a slave anymore. That's all he said, is because this guy helped me out. Let this one particular dude be free. If he really was if this really was a story about releasing slaves and no longer having them, this would have been a prime chance for Paul to be like, let this guy go. And oh, by the way, Philemon, something's changed. We're no longer doing that old covenant thing anymore. You now have to have no slaves. But if he did that, that would be a problem, because then he would be condoning the fact that God does, in fact, change his mind. And once upon a time thought slavery was great, and now, not such a great idea. This is a gigantic dilemma for Christianity. Honestly, it just is. It's just a huge dilemma, and I never saw it as a Christian, and probably because all the reasons that you explained earlier. You just can't. You're just stuck in it, and you just can't see it.
Wait, maybe Paul might have actually clarified all that. There was like all these books that they said that Paul wrote that we don't have anymore. There was that first epistle to the Corinthians. There was probably a third one. There was an early epistle to the Ephesians, I believe, and there was the epistle to the Laodiceans and some others. So maybe he clarified it and we just lost it.
Maybe. Yeah,
Well,
you might be onto something.
that can't be right, because God is sovereign, and the canonicity of the scripture is God ordained. So that's
true.
Right, which is why Enoch isn't on our holy scriptures either, even though in
Jubilees or Asher or any of that other stuff.
Even though in Ethiopian Christianity it is accepted as a canonical book, so who knows?
Even though it's referenced in the Bible, it's still not okay to.
It's not acceptable in our American version of the Bible, but in the Ethiopian version, that Christianity is different than ours, even though it's still Christianity, just not our Christianity. But we'll still accept them because they accept what? Jesus as God? Like, what is the standard? Honestly, I'm so confused.
Yeah, there's not one.
Don't know anymore. I can't figure it out.
Can I ask you a question? Alan, how long do we have before our cutoff?
I mean, we don't have a tight timeline. We're probably getting near the end here. I don't want to hold you guys up or our things. Usually we limit it to an hour and a half, so we're about rounding out. Go ahead.
Okay, can I throw in a question?
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about parenthood, I think we all agree that Yahweh is a shit dad and is a psychopath, and there's no reason to follow him. But one of the things that does come up in this to me is religious trauma, and one of the hardest parts for me is realizing two aspects of it. Number one, when you deconvert, you did think you had a heavenly father, no matter whether you should have thought he was good or bad or whatever. You did think that he was loving and that he had a plan for your life, and then you lost it, and it hurts. And you sort of have that double-edged sort of like realizing he was psychopathic. So this was a loving relationship in a sense with me and my ego, but I thought that ego was actually, Yahweh was woven into that. But now I've got this huge gaping hole in my heart, not the one where you need Jesus to come in and fill it, but a gaping hole of like, I thought I had a cosmic father. And you have to sort of reframe it as like the universe, as it were, is your father and your mother. The stars are your father and mother. Your own parents and heritage, your grandparents, they're your father and your mother. But you still thought you had it. And I've likened it to like if a bum on the street gives you a check for $1 trillion and you're convinced for a short time that that's cashable, and you go to the bank and they give you the bad news that no, this is not a real check, and I'm sorry, but this is not worth the paper it's printed on. And you think to yourself, oh shit, I had so many plans for that money. You kind of are an idiot if you grieve too much, because it's like you never really had it. You're grieving over something that was as good as thin air. But at the same time, if you held onto that check for 40 years and you were convinced that that check was cashable in 40 or 50 years, and then you realize it shakes you to your core that you don't have a heavenly father. And so I was curious, and weaving into that maybe the Stockholm syndrome issue of why was I in love with my captor? Why was I in love with a father figure that was so horrible? Why did I let abuse become the definition of love? And I didn't see the red flags. I was encouraged, to be a Berean, to study these things to see if they were so, to make myself approved as a workman that doesn't need to be ashamed. I was in this stuff day and night. The red flags were everywhere and I didn't see it. Stockholm syndrome had to happen. But regardless of that part of it, like it hurts to lose your father. And I know for me, I've sort of had the personal side of it where my relationship, my dad passed maybe 5 years ago, but he was not a good man in my opinion. He had a few things I would, we all want to look back and praise something, and there's a few things I could put on that list, but he said things to me to my face, like get out of my house and never come back. He said, I wish you'd never been born. So there was like some father figure issues there, but by the time that some of those really hit hard, I was already an adult and I was on my own 2 feet, and I was like, it hurts, but I'm okay. I'm pretty grounded as an adult. But when you look at the bigger picture, deconversion hurt a shit ton more than that stuff from my personal dad ever, my human dad ever hurt. The realization of like, I cannot believe that there's nobody out there looking out for me. There's no master plan. There's no one to look back on. Every time I thought, oh God, thank you for keeping me safe, that was a close call. There was just pure chance. I could have been creamed by that truck and quadriplegic or dead or something. It's like, how do you all deal with the trauma of thinking I had a father and now I don't? And if you truly believe that father was a good father, and now you've got nothing, did it hurt you? And did it hurt that you even though you now know I shouldn't have wanted to go to heaven and see him someday, when I was in it, my everything was, I cannot wait to see the loving eyes of my father that did everything, including give his own precious son to die for me and to rescue me from the slavery block of sin. I could not wait to see him. And I know some people I talk to in interviews say, bullshit, I didn't want to go to heaven that much. It sounded like a boring worship service where you just repeat the same goddamn hymns forever. It's like, I'm sorry, but I loved the glory of my gospel, and I loved the fact that he saved me from sin, and I really believed it. And the kingdom of God was everything to me. And when I lost my father, I lost everything. And it's still, I'd be converted 5 years ago or more. It's still to this day hurts in some ways. I mean, how do you all deal with that?
Well, my first response to him is clearly based on everything you just described. You never knew Jesus.
Exactly.
But that's exactly what we get
out from us because you were never among us.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the kind of garbage we get. And like, I listen to what you're saying, and personally, I empathize with you because I feel every bit of what you're saying. I do. I feel it deeply because I was right there with you. And I get so angry with Christians who just turn around and they use the common intellectual, textual response. Oh, like Dustin said, you went out from it because you weren't of us. Like, you never knew the real Jesus. You never knew my Jesus. And someone, oh, you didn't know my Jesus. Well, if you just knew my Jesus. Well, if you just knew my Jesus, then you would never have. It's always the my Jesus. It's always, if you just trusted who I believe in. It's always some freaking personalized Jesus that you had to believe in. Bro, I get what you're saying. And oh my goodness, dude, like I still feel it to this day too. I really do. Like the ripple effect is so powerful, man. Even to this day, like there's still moments where it's not like I want to go back or I still believe in some way. It's just Christianity was so powerful in the void that it created that even now that I've completely escaped and will never go back, I still have the remnants of that void in me where it's like this sadness sometimes where when I'm hurting or sad that I can't talk to my father. You know, I hear what you're saying. Like he was so much closer to me than even my actual dad. And I got to tell you, I have a great dad. My dad got caught in the brainwashing too, unfortunately, and he's still stuck in it. So, you know, he still followed some of the rules of Yahweh, you know, with the spanking and stuff. I don't blame him. It's just what it is. It's just, you know, he got stuck in it. And I would have been too if I would have been still in the religion. But in a lot of other ways, he was nothing like Yahweh. He was such a better dad than the God of the Bible. But even so, like, I get what you're saying, Tim. Like, because I lived it for 40 years, I had this intimate relationship with what I believed was Yahweh, which in reality was just myself. I mean, if you think about it, it's this idea I created in my own head. But it was so real to me that sometimes it's just so sad when I'm hurting and I don't have this being to turn to talk to anymore. Not because I couldn't pretend like he's there, but because I don't want to. It's just silly now. Like, it's just, I don't want to do like that. That just doesn't make sense. It's not actually helpful. It's just, I realize, like, even if I start doing it, I'm like, okay, this is dumb. I know it's just a created thing in my head. But sometimes I do wish it was real, you know? It's not like I don't want it to be real. I mean, I've heard a lot of Christians who have deconverted that say, it wasn't like I desired it. It's not like I chased it. It's not like I wanted this to be the case. It just happened, you know? So I feel you, man. I didn't sit around one day and say, you know what I think? I think today I'll become an atheist because fuck Christianity. That's not the way it worked. It just wasn't. It wasn't like that for any of us. You know, so I feel you, man. Like it is tough. Dustin, go ahead.
It almost killed me. I mean, literally, it almost killed me. That's why I wrote my book. If you haven't read my book, Tim, I'll send you, if you'll get me your address, I'll send you a copy. It's short. Most people read it in one sitting. And it's just a very raw autobiography of my indoctrination process and my deconstruction process.
Dude, don't read it if you don't want to cry. It'll make you cry as much as the Titanic. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's pretty rough, man. Because it literally almost killed me for exactly the reasons you're saying. Because it was about 7 or 8 years ago. I just knew it was undone. I knew, I just intuitively knew that I was going to have to let it all go. And I was trying to cling to some vestiges of it so that I could still have that cosmic caretaker somehow and in some way. Because you mentioned Stockholm Syndrome. I wrote a whole paper on that with regards to Christianity. That is exactly what it is. It is Stockholm Syndrome. It is 100% the abuser and the abusee relationship, and the abusee does not know how to live without the abuser. That is exactly what it is. And I got to a point where I did not know how I was going to live without it. And so I started drinking and got to the point where, I was drinking $3,000 a month worth of alcohol, and my wife didn't know where I was. I would be gone for 2 or 3 days, sleeping in a car. My brain could not compute all the existential crises becoming undone again. And I did not know how I was going to deal with that. So, man, that was very, very, very painful for me. But you know, it's interesting, man. For me, I can only speak for me. I cannot believe how happy I am on the other side of it. I personally do not crave that construct any longer, because I have found such a powerful substitute in this collective consciousness. And Alan, I am connected to you, and you are connected to me. I am connected to my kids. I am connected to Raphael. I am connected to my buddy Dave. There is a supernatural connectedness that we all have on a quantum level where energy is concerned in vibration that I believe is so tangible and real, because I can call you. I can call Alan and say, Alan, I need to talk. I could never call God and hear God back. It just never happened, you know? So what I have found on the other side of coming out of that is it is so much more powerful than anything Christianity ever offered me. And I'll tell you, I think I do. I described this in my book. I've always dealt with panic attacks, always, since the 6th grade. I had my first one in the 6th grade. And I will never forget it, sitting in history class. And I felt like I was having an outer body experience because I was so filled with anxiety all the time. Well, when I was coming out of Christianity, and I had already let it all go, I had admitted this is all BS. I was going through the worst anxiety I had ever experienced. My poor wife, I mean, I don't know how she dealt with it, because I got about an hour of sleep a night. I was running on for 30 days. I was running on no sleep. I was illegally taking Soma, Trazodone, Depakote. I mean, I was taking all this stuff to calm this anxiety, and nothing would work. And so the only thing I could do was I would go to my boys' room. At that time, I think they were 4 and 2, or no, 6 and 4. And I would go to their room, and they slept in the same room, and I could see their shadows on the bed, and I could see them sleeping with their nightlight on. And it was the only place I felt any sort of calm. And I stood in that doorway one night, and I thought, how do they sleep like that? I don't understand how they sleep like that. And man, the voice of my awakeness, that higher level of thinking, very clearly told me they sleep like that because they know that you love them. No matter what they do, you're going to love them. No matter what they say, you're going to love them. You're going to take care of them. You're always going to be their daddy, and they will always be your kids. And it was this powerful moment for me, because I thought, if I can love them like that, as screwed up as I am, and man, I was very screwed up at the time, then this collective consciousness of energy and them loving me back, and my wife loving me, and Alan loving me, and Raphael loving me, is far more powerful than that. I am involved in something that is real. It is tangible. It is not a cosmic caretaker that will someday make things right that I just accept by faith, but I have absolutely no proof for. No. I have something very real and very tangible, and I have it right now. And something crystallized in that moment, and I have not dealt with anxiety since. That was 6 years ago. And it had everything to do with me understanding the love of my children for me and my love for them. So juxtapose that to this Yahweh God. No, thank you.
Dude, what you just said, holy crap. So it just spurred a whole nother thought in me. How can any father, I don't care if you're a stepdad or a father that has produced children, and by the way, I'm a stepdad for now. We're going to be producing a child sometime soon, just saying, because I'm excited. I can't wait to have a kid. But anyway, that's the first place I've ever announced that publicly. But yes, it's going to be very exciting very soon. So anyway, other than that, so what you said, how can you, as a father, okay, just hear this, produce a covenant, right, where you claim these are your children. I'm calling you and you're my children on these conditions. If you do, blah, 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 but then I will love you. And if you don't, I will blah, 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 and curse you. How is that possible? Could any of you do that with your kids?
Nope.
Nope.
What kind of a father is this that we worshipped, guys? What? That is just mind-blowing. And I know the typical Christian answer, well, because you're not an infinite Yahweh. You don't know how things work. Yeah, we do. We're fathers. We know how it feels. So he must not know how it feels. So I don't get it. Like, it's just mind-blowing to me.
Well, but Tim nailed it. I mean, there is a profound psychological implication to all of this. There is. It is, and I agree with Tim as well. This is why I don't converse with Christians. I just don't see any point in it, because they absolutely will not see it until they start to ask the questions. You can tell when someone is starting to go over that edge. You can tell that something has happened. But even then, I mean, God, Alan, think about our journey out. I mean, mine started 17 years ago when I became a full preterist and I started seeing some holes in the Bible. And then I became an annihilationist, and then I abandoned the idea of hell altogether. And then I became a full determinist, and then I abandoned that. Then I went from full preterism to covenant creationism. And I mean, it all begins to unravel, but you have to cling to something if you're going to somehow have that God construct. And until you're ready to let go of it, you just won't do it.
You know, you make a good point. And just FYI, you used Unravel. You owe me some copyright money. So we're sticking with that.
Can I just add?
What's that?
Can I just add one last word here before we wrap up?
No, absolutely.
I think one of the most beautiful things about this is you get two aspects of it that come to my mind all the time. Number one, it's an opportunity to reparent yourself, to be both the earthly father that perhaps we all needed but didn't get, but still have the chance to be to ourselves in a sense, is through the healing process, through parts work and all that stuff. But also, it's a chance to look at your kids and say, I am going to acknowledge that I'm coming at this from a point of liability and a point where I need to learn how to be the best parent. And I need to understand that the things that even to this day might drive me in inappropriate ways, where you're like, I'm driven by a desire to find some kind of approval or to feel like I'm acceptable or something. And all these things in the shame culture that we were raised in, to say, I can acknowledge that those things still drive me, and I am going to cut this off so that they don't feel that. And it is a beautiful thing to both reparent yourself and also to try to at least do your best that you can to see your lack of being all the parent and father that you should be today, and say, I'm going to keep on working on this. I'm going to be a better father because they deserve better than what I got. They deserve much better than Christianity for sure. But they deserve you to say to yourself, if you'll just do a little bit of reflection about the things that you do that are directly hurting your children and may have hurt them for years to come, if you just think about it, when they're so young and malleable, you think, if I will take a more gentle tone, if I will take a more patient tone, if I'll be more forgiving, or whatever it is, whatever each person's fallback is, if you say to yourself, I'll look at myself and say, you don't have to be this way just because that's the way your daddy was, or I remember when I was a cabinet maker, I worked for this Italian guy, and he and his wife, he and his son, teenage son, would scream at each other, fuck you, and I was like, I don't even know if you're gonna ever talk to each other. And then by lunchtime, they were like, let's go have pizza. And I'm like, how are you all still friends? Like, that's just the way we talk. We're Italians. We scream at each other, but it's love. Like whatever motivation you're giving to verbally or and in any other way beat the shit out of your kids, and in any way to not build them up and love on them the way, not just the way you think you need to do, but the way they really need to with their individual personalities, and to be more and more sensitive to them. Yahweh in the Bible doesn't give us that stuff. Psychology, I think, is giving us a lot of great tools. Whatever it is, turn your eyes on your kids and say, they need better. They need to be parented well. You know,
Tim, you would love this book. It is super thick and hard to read.
Carl Jung.
Yeah, it's Young, the structure of the discipline of the psyche. Man,
Nice.
whew, it's exactly what you're talking about. Not
It's a pyramid.
not living and reliving in these constructs that we've created, and then we try and safeguard ourselves in, but letting those crumble and seeing with real eyes that are in the moment exactly what's going on with our kids and how to best love them in that moment right where they are. Not from fear, not living vicariously through something else, not from shame, not from guilt, but just in the moment loving them. Man, it's powerful.
yeah, what a beautiful gift to give him.
God, this has been one of my favorite episodes we've had yet. This is so, and this is so great. I really felt a connection. This was such a nice episode, guys. I love this.
Well, it's
Jeff-
like walking on a tight wire because we have to be vulnerable and talk about or something we lived. It's not just theology or some experience. It's a real thing that how the mechanics go about in the head. Huh?
Right.
Sorry.
Well, JP, so speaking of that, JP, you didn't have much time to talk because you were out for a while. We all had a chance to give our conclusions. Why don't you end the show on your last thoughts of everything we talked about? What do you want to have our audience hear? You close out the show with all of your fine wisdom as a French Canadian father.
Okay. That's a high order.
I know. The French Canadian father. That's as good as it gets. I know.
But the only thing I remember, my father, he was a very small guy, and he loved his beer. He was always on the beer, and he was a very, very smart autodidact. He learned everything on his own, and he talked to everybody, black, Hindu, anybody. He sit down with my dad. They would talk forever. He talked to anybody, and he was a very tender man. I was waiting for him in the truck because he's having a beer, At the end of the day, he was working. And then he stopped at the bar, and I was waiting in the truck. And then I go out of the truck, I go and talk to him. And he just grabs me and he starts sobbing and telling me that he loved me. This thing is more powerful than any other system. That he just grabbed me and he was crying and telling me that he loved me. Sometimes it's just little things like that we meet the needs of our kids, and it's no big theory. It's no big complicated thing to get into a nice relationship with our kids and all that. And it's a high order to be a dad. It's a very big honor. We take it all on our shoulders, but it's quite simple. We have to just kind of make sure we're there when they need it and be faithful to them. That's about it for me.
Man, I love that.
That's awesome. I feel we all share that, man.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, JP. Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Tim. We really appreciate you guys being on the show. It was so much fun. Next month, we have Derek Lambert and Mark Chiashira coming on to talk about different views in the Bible. I'm particularly excited about Mark sharing his view of the Bible with the astrology and everything. This is going to be so much fun. We're super excited. I am sad to see this episode end because, man, did I have fun. This was so good. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And thank you, viewers, for sticking with us and being a part of this. We hope you will join Dustin and I next Friday for our next episode of Birds of a Feather. And remember, we don't flock around. Good night.